Well, welcome everyone to another recording of the Social Media Newsroom. My name is Pascal Fintoni and I'm back with Natalie Eminae from 𝗁𝗁𝗲 Media for more news, advice, rants and raves about your favorite social network. Natalie, welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me back, Pascal. It is a pleasure to be with you.
Yes, and I can tell from the design behind you, you're back at your headquarters in Gateshead.
Yes, we're in the Northern Design Centre today, and not often I can say this, but the sun is shining and it's all good in Gateshead.
Excellent. So everyone, thank you again for your support and the reaction from our previous episode. So as you know, we have a new format, 4 segment that will allow us to explore what it means to be a social media marketer, full-time or part-time in today's economy. We begin with our first segment, Spotlight On, and you chose the platform for our Spotlight segment, Natalie, and it is?
It is TikTok. So TikTok is our, I would say, most asked about social networks, sometimes slightly behind X/Twitter because that's always in the headlines. But TikTok is our evergreen, popular talking point platform with most of our audiences. And from small businesses, that ranges from do they need to be on TikTok to what do they need to do to make TikTok work for them. And the reason that I've selected it is the TikTok trend report is out. And this is very much of the time of year. We see Pinterest predicts, we see anything that's sort of like upcoming trends, looking at this. The crystal ball is very, very much out in the world of social media marketing platforms. The TikTok trend report is slightly different to the likes of Pinterest predicts, where they very much pick a very specific trend and they hang their hat on that. So they say, okay, in 2024, everyone's going to be dressing eclectic grandpa. And you're like, wow, that's such a weird thing. I've never heard that before. TikTok does it a little bit differently. So they basically look at trends in terms of user behavior. And that gives us a little bit of an advantage. What that means is we're not going after one very specific niche upcoming thing that may or may not be applicable to your business. But shout out if you are watching and eclectic grandpa is right up your business marketing street. What TikTok allows us to do is basically look at that user behavior and apply that to how our own personal audiences and business audiences might interpret that shift in what they're expecting, what they're looking for, what they want to see, what's going to be big this year. And the nice thing about that is it means that we can apply that knowledge to TikTok, but to other platforms themselves as well. So even if you're watching this thinking, hey, Natalie, I'm not on TikTok, I don't really anticipate being on TikTok, these are trends that span beyond TikTok as a platform in itself. And we've seen TikTok kind of punching for a while now with things like the TikTok effect, the fact that we love and our brains kind of thrive on that short form video content that sets off all kinds of little kind of signals in our brains. And we love it. And we think it's, from a content consumption perspective, that's delicious short form video content that it's quite addictive. So TikTok trend report. Now they define their trends to do the sciencey bit first by the speed of culture methodology. So basically that means they're focusing on signs that signify the following. The first is trend moments. Now this is where any elements or behaviors start to get a little bit of buzz about them. So this is the type of thing where our early internet adopters will start to see a little bit of discussion around certain things or a certain type of content or a particular meme that's got legs. So this is our early stages kind of bit of hype. That will then transform into a trend signal. So this is where there's more action and interest around that seed of a moment. So the moment grows into a signal and suddenly there's more people participating with what this kind of concept is, how it might apply. We then probably at that stage start to see the most creative elements that come from that moment. This is where people are having a go at a TikTok challenge. It's where people are creating their own version of a meme. It's where businesses are sort of jumping on board with a trend. And then from there, If that trend continues to grow, it will go into a trend force. Now, trend forces are examples of large scale behavior where it's one of those things that everyone's talking about. It's a total water cooler moment, or that you log into your feed and you see tons of brands having a go at. So that is the trend moment into a signal, into a force. And it's something that we can start to look out for our own businesses and our own marketing opportunities as we go through the year. And not all moments need to happen for your business. It's absolutely fine to see one and think, hey, that's quite cool. I like it personally. It doesn't translate to our audiences, so I won't be participating, but I'm going to consume some of that content. But it's a kind of opportunity and a little bit of a reminder that if we are plugged in and we're looking for these moments, we can capitalize on them as they grow through that signal and that force stage. One of the main kind of topics that TikTok tries to tackle is how marketers keep up with cultures that are constantly evolving. And this is increasingly relevant for noisy platforms, so platforms where we see a lot of content, so right up the TikTok kind of street. And one of the things that they're championing for 2024, and I really love this, I hope you're going to like it too, Pascal, is creative bravery. So taking strategic risks for good reward with your content, within reason of brave and stupid, shall we say.
Well, I think for me, what has been interesting about reviewing this this report is twofold. So most brands and most platforms, they will do a start of the year, trends report and so on. And you look at it and it's so logical. You kind of go, yeah, I could have told you that. But with this one in particular, what I liked about it is, to begin with, they even challenge themselves. They kind of say, we're not going to fall for that trap of it's just logical, so who needs data crunching. And I love the way they've also been able to explain it in their own way. They use their own kind of semantic, their own kind of language. And this idea of trend moments, signals, and forces, I've never seen this before explained in that way, but it kind of feels like they've almost found a scientific way to explain word of mouth marketing, where it begins in a very modest way, moments, then it starts to gather momentum, gather signals, and then it becomes something that literally it has a global but collective force. And when you look at the report, they do also share their methodology, which most reports don't. Anything from conference to data crunching and data from different nations as well. So it feels a bit more reliable as a report. And then what they've done, which I'm going to ask you to expand upon, is this idea of capturing all of this into three key areas. So the first one they've called this idea of being curious, but not just you, but also your audience being curious and using TikTok for discovery of something brand new, which is interesting. So they call this a curiosity peaked. And then this idea of breaking the mold, or actually using more diverse range of storytelling techniques. So they call this the storytelling unhinged. And then this idea of it's a community experience, so bridging the trust gap by using other individuals than just yourself. So these are the three key elements. But I want to go back then to your creative bravery, because for me that's really what the art and science of communication is about. So I welcome it, but also I'm thinking, well, sure, that's obvious, because for all of us in charge of communication, what we do is take stock of the marketplace. We look at what, though don't spend too much time, look at the competition is doing, and kind of go, so how do we explain what we need to explain in a manner that feels a little different and unique to us, as opposed to plagiarizing all the others? And I'm wondering whether this creative bravery is simply a signal that you have permission to try new things, as people have done over the last decades and centuries when it comes to inventing new products, inventing new technologies, and of course inventing new ways of communicating.
No, absolutely. And I think the bravery sort of almost gives permission to try something new. It's a bit of a call to arms. And it's funny because we were literally just talking about this in the office this morning, because we are at the point of recording, we are not far off the Super Bowl. And we love the Super Bowl in the 𝗁𝗏𝗃 offers. Admittedly, some of us love the sport element more than others, but the reason that we love it is the roundup of ads. And I have actually just also earlier this morning said, wouldn't it be great if every bit of marketing organizations put in as much effort as they do for their Super Bowl ad? And it's basically the idea of, if you want your audiences to connect with you, to follow you, to engage with you, and to ultimately buy your products and services, you've got to put your best foot forward and actually put on a little bit of a show for them. So actually creating that content that's for your audiences. And most audiences are tricky. It's like that old Henry Ford quote. If I'd asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. So they don't actually, we're trying to kind of impress an audience who don't know what they want to see yet. And as a nature of that, we've almost got to try different things to figure out what works. Because if they want to see something that they haven't seen before that they like, they won't know what they like until they see it for the first time. So we've got to, as marketers, and I think part of it is, sometimes if we find something that's very formulaic and we know that it works and it delivers traffic month in, month out, we sort of want to keep it. And it's not to say discard that or discard your learnings, but it's got to say, why not have a little bit of a space and a little bit of permission to be trying new things alongside that, and actually trying to bring something new and dynamic and exciting to your audiences, because really that's what they deserve as customers of you and your brand.
Yeah, and I remind everybody listening or joining us, in this replay midway through our discussion of the report, that what TikTok is allowing us is to reflect on this idea of vertical content, and I mean to say that within that vertical screen, the space you can use the rules of thirds, you can half it, you can use a full screen and so on. And I'm seeing a lot more, because there was a time, wasn't there, where with TikTok, and you could argue with Reels and Shorts and so on, that the diktat was almost, you must occupy the full screen with a single image, and then you had to wrestle with whether or not the image was carefully centered. But I'm seeing more and more examples where people use maybe the top 2/3, or they use the middle bit and they add text and so on. So there's a lot of exploration. But if I use the first trend force, this idea of a very curious audience, it's almost this idea of creating content which is like, did you know? Or let me remind you. And the challenge for all of us is that means that we need to start to create content about information, insights, and details that we know by heart, that we ourselves, the content creators, feel completely unimpressed and nonplussed. And that, to me, is the hardest challenge that I have, whether I'm teaching blogging or all the way down to social media marketing, which is this idea of me, the brand owners and the marketers, spending my time stating the bleeding obvious, but that's what the audience wants.
It really is that moment of discovery. And I think you'll be the same as me, Pascal. There's nothing more grounding than when you're physically with someone and they ask a question, you're like, oh yeah, that's really true, but I haven't actually said that yet. Like, I haven't given you that information, and it's my job to give you that information, yet there is that fundamental info that I'm keeping from you, but for no reason other than it's too second nature to me. So I think taking a step back, and that fits very, very nicely with one of those trend signals that sort of fit into that first category, which is serendipitous scrolling. So the idea that we're all on I don't know whether this is a good or a bad concept, but the idea that we're all on our phones desperately looking for something that will connect with us, but actually by getting that content out there, it's making it discoverable. So you're putting it out there in a way that your audiences will find it, and they will find the information that they need. It's really, I think, probably about getting a bit old school and understanding that kind of audience journey from that discovery, and start to think about your different communities. So the people that you will be creating content for, the people who can benefit from your services or your product, and really sort of, put them into their own categories, think about what they know know, and think about, most importantly, what they don't know. Think about what no one's ever told them before. No matter how basic that might seem to us, it might be a fundamental, interesting shift. And I know even on my own kind of marketing journey, sometimes there's nothing better or more inspirational than actually getting a good reminder of the basics, the stuff that you know and you don't give yourself a little bit of space in your brain to think about. If someone then prompts with that information, that might just trigger a thought that changes an entire campaign. And it's all about getting back to that element of, building, sharing, and developing that knowledge with your community, which is what essentially positions you and your brand at the heart of your customer base, which is what any organization really wants.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to go back to that creative bravery, because the term may, you said, it may sound like you need to do something that is actually risky and not very sensible. And for me, it's twofold. So it's reminding people about the things that they forget because it's not their day job. You're the expert, they're not. It's finding ways for you to be enthused about stating the obvious, by doing something that is a bit creative, a bit different, and so on. And because of that micro content, it's not like you're going to commit hours and hours of your time. But what you do need to do, and that's going to link into the second trying force of storytelling unhinged, you have to think about it as a series, as opposed to a single or one-off. So you're not creating, if you like, a feature film masterpiece. You're creating almost like a Netflix series that you're going to binge on for an entire weekend. So the planning element is actually very important. Not only do you need to break down the information to micro content that they can all follow each other, but they can also be consumed individually, and it all makes sense. And that's what TikTok has been able to demonstrate, is that you can watch a 30-second video clip and it makes sense on its own. But of course, you get a greater experience if you watch and follow that particular account to see the full version.
Oh, absolutely. If you think about every video or every piece of content, if you are not TikTok videoing, but this applies to everything. If you think about each post or individual standalone bit of content as one chapter in the book of your journey with your customer, and just one chapter, one thought, just give your audiences one ideal, helpful, beneficial little bit of information that helps them move on with their day. It could be one thought that's a breakdown of 3 tips, but just give them one element of consideration and one prompt on what to do next. And it just really helps develop that content into that series and move your audiences on that journey with you. Otherwise, you're one hit and then nothing, and then one hit and then nothing. Whereas really, to build that audience, you need to view your content as almost episodic. And you could even plan your seasons and your arcs and your stories within it, but keep it nice and simple so each piece works as part of a wider series, but also as that standalone post. I think that's absolute magic, and I think it's often forgotten because we're either trying to do too much and put too much into things, or we're trying to just keep it as like one basic idea, but then that comes across as too just disjointed from the rest of our content, almost too standalone. And the perfect match is just getting it so it is like an episode of your favorite sitcom. It moves things forward, but you can enjoy it and benefit from it in its own right.
And that's fascinating, because there is an element of the report where I'm not in agreement, but I understand, it was created by TikTok for TikTok and so on, where they're almost claiming that they have invented a new way of telling stories, they have invented new voices and so on. And I said, well, you haven't, because you pointed out this has existed with the radio shows. People had to wait till the following Friday to see what had happened to their favorite heroes. So you have the series element. They would say things like, have you noticed that on TikTok, people start from the end, so they reveal first and they explain. Say, well, no, because actually, again, TV and radio done it very well, where during the opening credits of your favorite TV series, you see snippets of the episode that is about to come, and then and anyone of our generation remember watching Columbo, where you actually see the crime first. And then
exactly.
And then somehow, so yeah, I understand. They are excited and they are proud of what they've achieved, but they haven't invented anything. But what they have done is given the platform and the permission. There's one thing that is interesting with regard to storytelling unhinged that we carry over to other platform, is this idea of creating characters, fictional characters. So brands are starting to introduce or reintroduce. Remember the mascots that we used to have in marketing in the 80s and 90s, and so now you have element of fictional characters coming in to become the messenger of a brand.
Yes, and that's nice. It's an easy, because all of this is so easy. It can be an easier way to establish and humanize a brand, even if your mascot is not particularly human. It can be a way to kind of build connections with an audience in a way that sort of relieves physical individuals within the organization. But we see it particularly around kind of like Christmas campaigns and kind of seasonal campaigns, but it's much easier to get that buy-in and get people to follow, like you say, a mascot. If you imagine your sport team mascot kind of element and what they fulfill, which is an almost fun caricature of a serious representation, it's something that's literally there for the fans. And to help develop and build that fan base, you're almost lending that helpful kind of sidekick that takes you on your adventure. So you see that brand and you've got that guide with you, almost like that sort of Jiminy Cricket style figure. Which I know you'll know a lot more about from the storytelling perspective than I do, Pascal. But I guess you are the hero of the story, and your sidekick takes you on that kind of journey with you. But it almost gives you like insight and permission to be looking at this content. It's much more valuable if you get those kind of recommendations from someone. So if someone's like, hey, let me show you this, this is really cool, that has much more kind of credence to us as social creatures, because it sets off all those kind of tribe elements, than if we just kind of spot something and discover it for ourselves. So much easier to have that sort of guided facility in. And for brands that struggle to get people and humanized elements, it's a great way to go with the content.
Yeah, and I mean, you've seen people, and listen, I know that all this is time, money, and strategies, but it's becoming easier and easier now. I mean, we could even, I know there's some brands, although it's not taken up as much as one would have thought. They use AI mascots and avatars and so on, but we're not there. But the third trend force that was featured in the report, with this, which links to what you've just said, this idea of bridging the trust gap by collaborating with others. And I will say that in general, I've seen more examples of that happening on TikTok and actually Instagram, in fairness to them, than any other platform, where literally two brands would collaborate on something, or a brand will talk to one of their users, shall we say, customers, and say, shall we just do a message together? It's this idea of, again, telling the story by having others with you as opposed to being a sole messenger.
Absolutely. It gives that sort of social proof, to use a like old school kind of marketing example. And it really helps develop the kind of trust. I think one of the elements that TikTok does particularly well is it will give us a slightly, and I love to use the term grittier, but perhaps a more real version of whatever narrative and brand wants to give. So TikTok, the content tends to be individual led. It's video. It's not always glossy video. So most of it is kind of like, your two camera kind of user, which lends space for influencers developing quite a lot of voice, also lends space for communities kind of finding each other and actually finding people with useful advice. I know that one of those stats that's kind of kicking around is that kind of Gen Z see TikTok as a key search engine. I think it's about 40% of them would use TikTok over Google, which makes my eyes water as a, I guess, ardent Googler of everything. But it's about that discovery and that kind of looking for information. You might not be looking for information from the authority. You might be looking for information from a peer at this kind of stage. Some of the examples used in the TikTok trend report were around pregnancy and skincare. So you might not want the Johnson & Johnson kind of like expert bath time routine for your baby. You might want the routine for the mum who's in the same situation as you, but had their kid 6 months earlier and has perfected that routine. You want hers, not the kind of brand corporate one. So it's all about that sort of getting that information and kind of sharing that information. It's a little bit to again go kind of like way old school, would be like your oral histories. So actually like how content and information would traditionally be handed down within a kind of like tribe setting. So it's firing all of these crazy kind of elements within our brains that we are, I guess, just biologically predetermined to kind of look for the kind of elders in terms of people that have more experience in a kind of a certain sector. We want that peer kind of validation. And for brands, that means that actually you can't exist in a silo. So you can't just put out your brand content. You need to have that fan base there that's going to talk about you, and maybe even bring in an element of influencer strategy. So you've got some really key voices that are already established that help you tell those narratives in a genuine way to build that trust, because trust is one of those things that social networks struggle with entirely. But great to see that TikTok is maintaining a strong element of that.
Thank you very much. And listen, we need to move on very soon to our next segment. But before I do so, a quick highlight from the report, just to get a reaction. So having shared all that information, and we will put the link on the show notes for people to download the report. Is very visually stimulating and easy to follow. So these would be the recommendation from the authors of the report in terms of, so now that what do I do now? So back to your first statement, they talk about embracing creative bravery. To me, feels more like just do what actually you feel is right and that you've got a good gut feel for. But utilize music and sound. So it is a multi-sensory experience to be online, but even more so on TikTok, and including actually the captioning as well. TikTok seems to have claimed that very unique style. To your point, expand on creative partnerships with all manner of individuals and brands. And I think that's very true for brands. If you want data and know what's working, not working, and I'm sure they would say that TikTok, use their advertising solutions so that you are in a position to make informed decision about moving forward.
Absolutely. I think there's so much that you can do. And whether you are doing that on TikTok or whether you're doing it on another platform, there's a lot to think about for kind of 2024 as the internet on a whole gets noisier. You've got to sort of raise your game. And I think there's some excellent elements and kind of prompts in there to move your market into the next stage this year.
Thank you very much. Really enjoyed having a deep dive on this report, and by extension, communicating via the vertical screen. We're just going to move things on now with our next segment, the one take or the one tactic to try out. Now, in this segment of the show, Natalie and I would like to give you, shall we call it homework, about something that is going to make a difference to your social media activities. It can help with the strategy, it can help with the planning, it can help with the execution. And each week we either choose some tech solution that can make life easier, or a tactic, a bit of a mindset shift that can, again, make a huge difference to the results and the engagement you get on social media. So, Natalie, have you gone for a tech or a tactic?
I've gone for a tactic, and because I thought it would be very rude to talk about TikTok but not talk about the benefit of short form video, my tactic is embracing short form video as part of your overall marketing strategy for this year. Now, as I've sort of mentioned in the first segment, there's a lot of things that short form video does with our brains. We like to see it. It rewards us and it gives us a little payoff. It also means that we can sort of give our audiences a lot more information, because compared to a visual post or a block of text, we can convey a lot more information in that moment, and use it as a tool to take your audiences on a bit of a journey, give them a bit of case study, make them feel something. Traditionally, if you can tell a little bit of a story, so something comprehensive with your short form video, meaning in under 30 seconds, you can get a beginning, a middle, and an end, or that could be a stat, what it means and what you need to do about it, or if you are behind the scenes at an event, where you are, a sneaky secret, and then kind of a little share with your audience. There's loads of 3-segment elements you can bring to the table. And that fires up everything that we like to see in our little brain receptors, and it means that content resonates heavily with our audiences. It makes it super shareable and a little bit addictive, but we won't be focusing on that too much. If you are using TikTok, it's perfect for the platform. If you are not using TikTok, you can give it a go on any platform at all. I know that X/Twitter has proclaimed itself a video first platform in recent weeks. I think we'll debate that on a future episode, Pascal. But it is great for getting that short form video out where audiences have short attention spans. On LinkedIn, where we are basically plagued by quite boring content, it's a great way to humanize, cut through in a way that's very quick and very deliverable. And if you are on anything Meta, so Instagram or Facebook as main players here, we have got Reels. So my recommended reading for the month is Facebook and Meta's Reel School, which is packed with tips for developing that short form video narrative, editing stats. It's got a ton of examples of things that have worked for various different industries. So thoroughly recommend that if you want to put a bit further strategy and further reading behind your short video elements for this year.
Nice. And I love you give the examples, and we'll put the link to that resource as well from Meta. Interestingly, pure accident, but I've gone for tech that supports actually your tactic, and inspired obviously the conversation we agreed to have on the TikTok report. So we spoke a moment ago about this idea of doing series. So we're talking about a series of 5, 10, 20, 30 micro bits of content. And actually, when you think about it, it can be a little challenging to plan all of that. Perhaps conversely, it's easier to plan a 10-minute discussion on a subject than 10 times 1 minute. So I came across this great bit of tech from an organization called SEO Review Tools. And I realized that this is the social media newsroom. I'm talking about SEO, but they are close cousins. And what this platform has offered, invented and launched, an AI-powered content outline generator. Now, hear me out. Although this was created primarily to help you create an article, what the content outline generator does, Natalie, it actually breaks down your content into topics, subtopics, subtopics. So literally you have that granular kind of breakdown of your content, and each one of those subtopic or subtopics can become actually an idea for that short form video based part of the whole. So I did a test. I've got a client who is going to be writing a long form article on setting business goals. And so you put it through, the link I'm sharing on the show notes, and you end up with this very, very detailed outline. So literally you've got the main section, introductions, the importance of setting business goals, understanding SMART goals, strategies. But each one of those has between 5 to 10 subsections. So I give you, for example, the benefits of setting up goals. Then you have a subsection provides direction and focus for the business, but also it helps in evaluating success and progress, but also it can boost motivation, employee engagement, but also facilitate effective decision making. So you've got all that granular thing that is going on. I mean, the breakdown goes on to 2 sides of A4 by simply asking the question on this platform, setting business goals, the what and the why. That's what I wrote. And I asked for the outline, and I was given literally, you could argue, the short list for your short videos on TikTok, Reels, and more.
That sounds incredible, and I'm going to be trying that after the recording.
Excellent. So here we are. You have one tactic and one tech to try out this week. Let us know how you get on. For now, we need to move on with our next segment, which is important, not important. So in this segment of the show, I research and present to you, Natalie, news and announcement from social media platforms, and I get your reaction. Simply state at the end, important and not important. Then I pick a couple to have a bit more of an in-depth discussion. I'll start with number 1. Instagram is adding a new option that enables you to cut out element of your still image post, which you can then reuse as stickers in your own stories and reels. Important, not important?
Not important. I don't think. Nice to have a new editing feature, but
We move on. Number 2, generative AIs. Next wave is text to video, with Meta and YouTube making advanced progress on tools that will enable all of us to create video clips from prompts. Important, not important?
Super important, hopefully, providing the AI doesn't let us down on this one.
Number 3, Meta announced it will be removing or consolidating some of its detailed ad targeting options, either because they are not widely used or they relate to topics that people may perceive as sensitive.
Important in terms of it helps make things a little bit safer, I think.
All advertisers, number 4, all advertisers looking to run ads about social issues, elections, and politics are now required to indicate whether their ad was digitally created and altered by AI or other methods.
Very important.
46% of buyers are interested in buying products from social media with a one-stop shop solution, according to 2023 ComScore data.
Important but not new information.
Twitter, or X, has published the latest version of this marketing calendar, which provides a simple interactive overview of all the key dates and events coming up in 2024.
Important. We find this very helpful at the Okoko office and recommend you check it out too.
And according to Social Media Today, messaging is the new social media, with more and more people switching to private messaging group to share the latest updates as opposed to posting publicly.
Not important. We knew it already.
And finally, number 8, Pinterest will continue to advance its AR try-on elements in order to further enhance its in-app experience. Pinterest already offers makeup try-on tools, and it is now experimenting with home decor products as well.
Not important. If you've ever tried the Amazon to see what a product looks like in your home, I would imagine this is very clunky and maybe has a long way to go, but for the future, might be great.
So I want to go back. Thank you very much. It's been fun. I want to go back to this idea of the platform inventing things all of the time that either are not being requested or that unfortunately are going to let us down. So first two, the Instagram will allow you to cut out elements of your still images, use them as stickers, maybe, but actually they already have a plethora of stickers. So why would you want to use more of your time to create, unless you've done something pretty amazing with a professional photographer? And then you're right, this idea of I'm going to write a sentence and I'm going to have a video to publish on Facebook. But test to date of all those platforms, the video that you get is not very good at all.
No, it's one of those things where just because the feature can be developed doesn't necessarily mean that an audience wants it and that it will sort of come to fruition. I like the idea of text to video in terms of, in my head, I imagine this as a way to replace, those quite clunky animated, often you get them from Fiverr type business explainer videos. I'm thinking if we view it as something that could realistically clean those up a little bit, that might potentially work. I think it also blurs the line between reality and what is AI generated and puts, I guess, us as individual users in a little bit of a tricky spot with it. Because if we're using it for things like explainer videos for company websites, that's one thing. But if we're actually using it to produce content that then goes out on social networks where audiences might not be able to tell the difference between whether it's true, whether it's real, or whether it's something that's kind of faked to look like something happened that didn't happen, it sort of puts us in a bit of a, for want of a better phrase, grotty area. And I think it's one of those things where we've really got to start to look at AI in terms of fake news and taking a little bit more responsibility with the things that we are creating and kind of putting out there. For the Instagram stickers, I think they've just copied the iPhone app though, where you can basically take kind of an element. I like to send my other half like 100 pictures of the dog pulling a silly face. So it's a good feature, but he would probably argue that the world very much doesn't need it.
Do you know what's interesting about AI is back to what would be better or more helpful. So here's some suggestion for Mark Zuckerberg. I know he's listening to the show and
always listens.
Here's the thing. So consuming the social media content still relies on me to access my phone, my laptop, and launch it. And if you think about the appetite there is now for podcast listening when you're traveling and so on, I think a much better use of AI would be for you, for example, to provide a sample of your voice, against your accounts on social media, and for me to actually select. Actually, I'd like Natalie to read out to me her social media post, and AI would make the link for that. You know what I mean? So I think that there's something in there about reach and consumption a lot more than some form of gimmicks. I want to quickly, before moving on to our final segment of the show, this idea of 46% of buyers would love to have a one-stop shop solution on social media. And I was racking my brain thinking, I don't know whether actually anyone has yet cracked it in terms of the different platform that we're aware of. Has anyone yet provided what buyers have in mind, that one-stop shop solution? So I am on Pinterest, I am on X, I am on Facebook, I am on Twitch and all the others. Has anyone done it yet, or is it still work in progress?
Still work in progress, and we're seeing varying degrees of effort on it. So Meta have revamped their Instagram and Facebook shops. Now they've actually taken kind of a step backwards with it. But I think the element that is sticking for most platforms is the payment element. And I am not sure necessarily if I was a major online payment provider like a PayPal, I would necessarily be opting to go into business with any particular kind of platform. Although I guess X, Twitter, now will be front of the queue for the historic Elon kind of link to PayPal. But no one's done it well. No one's done it to the point where it actually kind of physically works. There's enough prompts on Facebook right now in the UK where you can find a product, you can click through, and you land on the relevant kind of web page, at which point most websites that are e-commerce enabled are designed to get you through the checkout quite quickly these days. So we're not kind of too far off. I think people would say that they wanted it, but whether it would be that much of a game changer, I do not know. And certainly we are miles away from the kind of the WeChat kind of facility where everything is via a singular app. And then once you're in, you kind of do anything that you might need to do in that kind of digital space. So I think as much as people say that they want it, I don't know whether they're particularly lacking by not having it. And I don't see anyone cracking that particular element very soon. There's a lot more kind of digital kind of issues that come with kind of being able to check out on something like a Twitter or X. You don't actually have that much information held by the platform. With Facebook, yes, they've got your IP address, but you don't physically register your address with Facebook. So it sort of raises all these questions with shipping and everything. So I think the sort of once you're in the weeds, it's very difficult to get out with these. And do I want Facebook to know exactly where I live? Probably not. I mean, do they know already? Probably yes, but there's a difference.
Yeah, it'll make it any easier for them. So two last ones to go. So very briefly, I think it's going to be fascinating with the elections coming, from the US to Europe, about this idea of particularly visual post altered and manufactured by AI. And having to actually therefore put a disclaimer, for example, Macron was never there, kind of things, or I'm sorry, Trump never shook the hand of that individual in a past, that kind of thing. So it's going to be fascinating. But I want to close on a bit of a positive, and I would agree with you that for many, many years now, the Twitter and X marketing calendar has been brilliant. So we put the link in the show notes again. It serves as a reminder. It could be actually part of a co-working session with colleagues and more. But I need to check again, because they used to do two things. So they had their online marketing calendar. So you go online, you can select where you're based, and then it would give you the big national, international days and sporting events and so on. But they used to also have a free download, like a PDF, which was like a workbook where you could actually plan your monthly content, and they had prompts and that kind of thing. So again, actually, interestingly, you could argue one of the smallest network, in terms of users and so on, but they've always done the support to small business owners a bit better.
Oh, absolutely. It's definitely been a tool that we've recommended for kind of years. And it's one of those things a little bit like the sort of TikTok trend report. It doesn't matter if you're on that platform or not. There's so much kind of good stuff in there that helps you plan for whatever platform you are on. But yeah, I would say that sort of TikTok marketing background side, certainly up until relatively recently, they used to do a whole host of excellent, super interactive kind of agency webinars. They have sort of recently fallen out of favor. As soon as that sync came in, they sort of dropped off the platform a little bit. But there are some great underutilized Twitter/X resources, and I would definitely say have a good kind of look through that help center. If you've got 20 minutes and a cup of coffee, it's definitely going to pay off by having a little look through those resources.
Super. Again, we put all the links to the resources we mentioned in the show notes. Natalie Eminae, we've reached the final segment of the Social Media Newsroom. It's Film Marketing Social Media Special just after this. Now, for Film Marketing Social Media Special, you chose the movie, Natalie Eminae. Remind us of the title.
I chose Oppenheimer.
What a selection. Tell you what, let's watch the trailer.
This is a national emergency.
Detonator charge.
We're in a race against the Nazis. And I know what it means if the Nazis have a bomb.
We have a 12-month head start.
18.
How could you possibly know that?
We've got one hope. All America's industrial might and scientific innovation connected here. Secret laboratory. Keep everyone there until it's done.
Let's go recruit some scientists.
Build a town, build it fast. If we don't let scientists bring their families, we'll never get the best.
Why would we go to the middle of nowhere for who knows how long?
Why? Why? How about because this is the most important thing that ever happened in the history of the world?
You're the great improviser, but this you can't do in your head.
Are we saying there's a chance that when we push that button, we destroy the world? Chances are near zero. Near zero. What do you want from theory alone? Zero would be nice. This is a matter of life and death. But I can perform this miracle.
World War II would be over. Our boys would come home.
That's happening, isn't it?
The world will remember this day. Our work here will ensure a peace mankind has never seen. Until somebody builds a bigger one.
You are the man who gave them the power to destroy themselves. And the world is not prepared.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3.
Truman needs to know what's next.
2,
What's next?
1.
Wow. I mean, we could even spend the entire segment talking about this trailer and the composition, the music, the sound effects, and so on. So I first saw Oppenheimer in the summer, I think probably weeks after it was released, big screen IMAX experience. What about you?
I've only recently watched it. We watched it over the holidays and we watched it at home. So we did the whole streaming at home experience.
Wow. I mean, that being said, it's the construct of the movie and the cinematography was such that even on a large TV, you would have had quite an experience, like all of us watching this.
Oh, absolutely. And from a really sort of geeky kind of TV film setup, we have the light strips around the TV, the Philips ones, although I'm sure other brands are available. So actually the kind of, the kind of explosions and the kind of dramatic, it sort of, lights up the whole wall. So it was quite a watch. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously we were at the cinema. So this is, I should check again, but 3.5 hours, something of that line. And honestly, time just flew. I mean, I said to my dad, because I was with my dad, said, you normally start to get to a point where you start to go, this is a bit long, and then something happens that re-engages your interest. It was seamless. I mean, I just felt like for 3.5 hours, I was completely enthralled.
No, absolutely. I was the same. And I do get a little bit bored. I think it's all the social media wrecks an attention span. So normally I'm sort of waiting for a film to finish, but this was very much one where I was kind of avidly watching and very invested in the story.
Yeah, so Oppenheimer, I mean, if you're not sure, remind you, this is a story of the scientist and his role in developing the first atomic bomb, and actually the movie centers around the first test, then the aftermath and the reaction from the politicians and more. And it had in terms of the marketing campaign, before we move on to social media, the poster design was very arresting. It was proper fire and brimstone stuff, with that kind of rich orange and dark and ash and dust and so on, with a strapline that the world forever changes. And this monumental historical event had to be given that treatment, based on the book written called American Prometheus. But for me, what was interesting is this idea of how do you market a story that people know enough about, that's pretty serious stuff, that you're not going to crack a smile throughout the whole film or whatever. And more importantly, what decisions do you make around the platforms you go for on social media? Obviously, this was a gift from the gods of cinema to have something called Oppenheimer. There's no chance that you're going to compete against somebody else and get some confusion with the term and so on. So they had the official hashtag. So, and I know that you chose it as a movie because, actually last time we spoke about the Barbie social media campaign. So let's begin with that and this idea that at least not only did they have a incredible story to tell and share via social media, they had an amazing name, Oppenheimer, but they could already piggyback the Barbenheimer phenomenon.
Yeah, so Barbenheimer was, I don't remember any cinematic event like Barbenheimer. And this all came about, I'm guessing, because the 21st of July release date was the same for kind of both movies. Both absolutely huge movies, but in completely different ways. And this, I guess, again, if we were to go back to the TikTok trend signal, it really took off in terms of this idea that actually these two kind of cinematic giants were launching on the same day. It brought in an element of friendly rivalry. And I think within audiences, certainly one of the things that I'm always planning is what my next film viewing will be and what I will see ahead of seeing other things. So I think it really tapped into the sort of like, what's your priority? Is it Barbie? Is it Oppenheimer? And I think one of them, and not to be like super general about this, but I know that I was probably keener to see Barbie and my other half was probably keener to see Oppenheimer. So it almost had that sort of, if it was, pre-made for certain couples that might want to kind of have a little bit of kind of friendly rivalry within that. And also households that might be watching both films. So it definitely brought everything kind of together in that element. It created so much buzz. There were memes, there was merch, and it really enabled audiences, rather than just sort of going to the cinema and watching the film in quite a passive way, you were part of that little movement. You were part of the Barbenheimer weekend or the Barbenheimer kind of screening. And there are a few brave souls out there that did both movies back to back. I am reliably told by the internet that it happened. For me, I would probably have to do Oppenheimer first and then Barbie because, it's an easier watch, isn't it, really? Get the sort of, really pay attention kind of bits out the way. Long time to be sat in the cinema, though. Hopefully they had lots of popcorn and hot dogs.
Yeah, but you're right. The amount of memes and short form videos. Back to that again. But also, you had moments where during premieres and say secondary premieres, because there were sometimes screenings in different venues, the stars and producers of the different films were asked, and they would say, "Well, I'll go and see both. They're great." So that there was definitely that element of very warm frenemies, going on. But I think you're right. As we mentioned when we looked at the social media marketing of Barbie. It was this idea of let's get back to the cinema and to the big screen and let's not, get ourselves bogged down on, that's it, literally go and see both. And I think it's important to remind ourselves because, as a population, we went through COVID and so on and so forth. But there was a time when people went to the cinema several times a week. I mean, I did certainly. And therefore you would see more films at the cinema. Now, in terms of social media, there were some interesting decisions, and we're going to discuss that. So first, you choose a platform, and they went for Facebook, for Instagram, for Twitter, /X, and YouTube. I'm always into mind whether YouTube should qualify as a social network. I know they want to, And I get it, you post information, people can leave comments and so on. Yeah, fine. So let's have YouTube on the list as well, but not TikTok, for example.
Yes, so TikTok was very much missing from the Oppenheimer kind of marketing strategy. And I think this was a case of definitely knowing your audiences and knowing where you are going to find them and kind of be able to have a good, strong, meaningful kind of connection with them. It also is a testament to sort of repurposing content because, like you've said, Pascal, TikTok very, very vertically focused. So whether all of that cinematic, incredible viewing translates itself a little bit easier and a little bit kinder to things that might be more focused on that square video, it sort of, begs the question. But interesting to see that I think in terms of age demographic and who's interested in kind of which film, TikTok we do see as largely kind of under 35s and predominantly under 24s. And whether at that point in your life you are particularly interested in a big, hey, this is a really important historical story, it impacts how we all live right now, and it's an important part of like humanity's kind of journey. I don't know necessarily whether you want to hear that at 24, whether you're out just living your best life and being generally indestructible. Now, when you get to that 35 age bracket, then maybe sort of knowing what's come before, how the world works, understanding the bigger picture, and probably watching ungodly amounts of kind of scrolling news to constantly keep learning about the world around us sort of comes into play, and these narratives become a lot more relevant and actually become something that you want to learn about. I think they probably went with the, okay, who are our audience? Where do we reach them, and let's meet them on their own terms rather than risk. We'll put a ton of resource into that. It might not resonate with that audience because they might not be the demographic that come and see our film, and therefore that budget is not going to see the return that we would have liked to see on other platforms. So I think it's quite a bold move to kind of almost ignore TikTok as a platform, but probably one that definitely paid off because they were able to put that marketing resource in the spaces where they knew there would be a better return.
Yeah, and I think what you've given us is a good example of what happens when someone puts together a business case and when it's driven by audience insights. And I will say that the YouTube experience was fantastic, and there was so much that didn't always make it to social media. So there was behind the scenes, there was the making of interviews, there was all manner of things. And the one thing that they did on YouTube, and I'm thinking, oh, what a shame that somehow it didn't carry over to Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. It's got to be practical reasons, but they did this incredible year-long countdown to the release of the movie. So for the entire year, give or take, perhaps a fraction shorter, there was a countdown live on YouTube. Right. And actually some great fans of the film and more stayed up because I think for the UK with middle of the night when the countdown reached the end, and it coincided with actually the test of the bomb as well, date for the same date and time. And then suddenly, bang, you had a very unique cut of the trailer. And then once the countdown was over, took the video offline.
Oh.
So
that's incredible.
Again,
that is absolutely incredible.
So talk about creating a sense of event with 𝗵𝗵. They also said, we're going to make it work. Now people, and there was a fan who recorded it, so you can watch now a replay, but literally the countdown, because it's meant to be, it's finite, it's once it's over and the bomb explodes, everything's destroyed. And then after that you had obviously all sort of trailers and so on. So there were some very, very interesting ways to use YouTube, but again, it's a shame that it would have been missed because it wasn't on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter.
No, absolutely. That sounds incredible. I love that kind of narrative that they've lent into the fact that it is that final kind of thing and the world's changed forever and that moment's gone. We can't go back in history now. Oh, no. It just sounds so incredibly well thought out, and I like thoughtful marketing that sparks that conversation, that builds that hype in the right way and resonates with right audiences.
Yeah, and talking of thoughtful, I mean, it's simple, but I always get a kick out of it when I study what organizations, brands, and films do with their header graphics, on Facebook, on Twitter, more so than Instagram. But so the image that people will know very well now because of the marketing is, you've got this backdrop of flame and explosion and dust. You've got the very menacing kind of atomic bomb with all the wires and things sticking out, and the figure of Oppenheimer front and center, looking very, very smart. We'll come back to that. And the way they position, whether it's left-centered, right-centered, justified, based on the platform that they're on. So we know that Facebook is a pain because you get that thumbnail image that is forever kind of traveling across and covering the most important message and so on. So I would encourage people as a lesson, two things: that they change the copy on those images regularly. So first it was about the launch, then it was about watch it online. Now you can own the 4K Blu-ray and digital version. So they change it regularly. And that's a lesson for all of us. But the way you position your core graphics and your key messages to accommodate, sometimes the way in which that thumbnail image can also get in the way is good practice, and we should do it more often.
No, absolutely. I think it's one of those underutilized kind of elements for sure.
And then I wanted to do a bit of a spotlight on more recent use of social media with regard to, again, lessons for all of us, the repurposing of accolades, nominations, and wins. So we are starting. So this was released last summer, went through, obviously, screening and so on, nominations. And this year there's going to be, well, all sorts, the Oscars and more. And what is interesting is for all of us as brands, personal brands and business brands, if you get an accolade and nomination, you might do a quick post or sometime because actually you're very modest and you don't do those things, you don't tell anybody. But what they've done is they've created this incredible visualization of the nomination. So they would choose striking photography, and then on the top third, they would write, what the nomination is all about, and then they would remind everybody that this is a film by Christopher Nolan, Oppenheimer. So they are forever, really stating that they've been nominated, but not just using copy. They are creating a unique graphic each time for it.
It grabs that attention, and I think it reminds you, it's almost like they're putting their money where their mouth is. They're like, we've been nominated for this, and remember how good we were or we are. I think it'll definitely mop up anyone who hasn't yet seen it, but who might be intending to see it with all the kind of awards hype. But I think it will also possibly prompt rewatchers. I mean, personally, it's a bit soon for me to rewatch. I'm sure I will watch it more than once, but I generally prefer maybe about 12 months kind of between viewings. But I think for kind of certainly the kind of effects or the kind of the behind the scenes fans, it's probably almost ready for a rewatch right now.
Do you know what's interesting? What you've just said about this idea of reminding the audience why one is worthy of nomination, because I wonder if that's what they had in mind when they did another version. So version 1 is a standalone bit of photography, which is just stunning, reminds you about the experience watching the film, and then that great copy is in that very unique orange and white. But there's another one where they went into almost like a mini flip book, which is won the nomination for the costume designer 𝗬𝗺𝗻𝗄𝗃, if I said that pronounced properly, where they literally, not only did they say, oh, by the way, 𝗬𝗻𝗄𝗃 has been nominated for excellence in costume design, but let's remind you, and suddenly you have a breakdown, you have an image of Oppenheimer, and they break it down. So what we did for the character Cillian Murphy, we had to create using materials that was sourced, so that we could create something that was actually correct in terms of the time. We created 2 hats, 10 suits, 12 shirts, 12 ties, 3 overcoats, because actually the costumes are absolutely divine in a movie. And we even went as far as, researching how to get the shoes right and so on. And then they talk about the character of Robert Downey Jr., Louis Strauss. And so certainly not only are they stating that we have a nomination, but they're going to the details of why this nomination is probably warranted, because look at all the things we've done. And then there's another one where they talk about they created over 1,000 costumes covering 4 decades. They name them, they tell you what it is. So you feel not only that there is you are told about the nomination, but then you learn an enormous amount about why this nomination is worthy of consideration.
That's incredible. That's so like, I mean, that's so much work. And I think it really does help exemplify it, because I would have said the costumes were great. That would, prior to this conversation, Pascal, I'd be like, oh, the costumes were great. But as a mere mortal, I wouldn't have known the difference between a researched and carefully created shoe that's correct at the time versus something you can probably just pick up in M&S and looks like a man's shoe right now. So it's incredible to know that, and to know that that is the standard that they've held themselves to. Just makes it all the more enjoyable, and I think just shows that it's for the love of film, for the love of actually like getting it right, because this is stuff that can be scrimped, it can be kind of, you know, done quickly, and you know, no one else will mention it, no one will really look at it, and even if someone did notice, it might just be one of those little internet things, like a Starbucks cup in a Game of Thrones kind of episode. It's that, you know, this is a cinematically it's excellent, and it's excellent because of all these small elements, and really cool to know that people care that much, I think, for sure.
Yeah, and therefore, I'm thinking about this, you know, how many times are we perhaps all of us guilty of making a statement about our products and services, or even saying, "Oh wow, you know, we won this award," or "Wow, we've been nominated," or you know, we share, for example, a compliment and a thank you message from a client, but we don't tell the full story. We don't explain what could lead to anyone to have that opinion. And then here you have, like I said, you know, there are 4, 5, 6 different images you can follow as a flip book about why the costumes are being nominated. And I'll just close very quickly, or one that we could all use around, you know, giving the team a shout out, maybe. So another repurposing of accolades. So no surprise there. Cillian Murphy, Robert Downey Jr., and Emily Blunt have been nominated for so many different awards because of their incredible performance. So image number one, think of it again as a book or a magazine. You can kind of turn the page of it. Image number one, you have three. So the square is split into thirds. Top third, Cillian Murphy. Second third, Robert Downey Jr., and the last third is Emily Blunt. So they're all on the same image. But then the second image is just one of them. So we have now, so we almost have a summary slide, if you will, Natalie, and then we expand upon what we mean, and then each of the actors get their standalone image, they get the award nomination, but they also get a quote from a critic or a magazine. So in the image number 2, in this little kind of shout out for the Screen Actors Guild Award, is from, you know, the Los Angeles Times, and we read, Emily Blunt brings startling force to the role, in addition to the nomination for the SAG Awards. And this montage of images, of quotes and so on, but also we start with a summary, then we expand.
No, it gives a full story, like the full picture. And I think sometimes as audiences, we need to be reminded of it. So excellent. And something that I think we can all apply. That's like such a good takeaway. We can all do things a little bit better and give our audiences a bit of a clearer picture.
Yeah, so I mean, you saw it more recently than I have. I mean, just discussing it, I'm thinking, oh wow, actually, I could watch this again now. It's been a few months. You've done the research for the social media marketing campaign. Any final thoughts or key takeaways on reflection?
Well, I think one of my favorite things, and I really like this when I watch a film, is again the little payoffs. So the fact that there were key themes that ran through, and I'll be very careful on the wording of this because I don't want to give any kind of spoilers, but little kind of throwbacks to kind of key phrases, key elements, and bits of reveal were like quite incredible for me, and it was one of my kind of like key takeaways. I think, again, coming back to are we sharing everything with our audiences, and are we making our audiences feel smart? Because I believe the correct cinematic phrase is a gun. So you hide a gun in your narrative, and then your audiences know that the gun's there. So later in an action scene, when someone pulls out the gun, your audiences feel really smart. I think as marketers, are we doing enough to make our audiences feel really smart and rewarded for sticking with our content? Would kind of be my my kind of key takeaway for it, because it's so rewarding, and there's nothing like that kind of payoff and kind of reward. So I think that would be my kind of main element, but definitely kind of team up and collaborate, whether you are making the most of your physical team, or whether you are collaborating with your frenemies in a Barbenheimer kind of style, maybe influencers from other kind of sectors and other businesses. But there's so much that you can do beyond the basics to just really elevate marketing.
Yeah, thank you very much. And for me, the more I think about it, the more this idea, the lesson looking at what they've done is, understand the platform, understand its idiosyncrasies and these little quirks and so on, and adapt accordingly to graphics and so on. But really understand that not everybody remembers everything about your business, even though for you it's repetition. So don't just share statements, do share stories. Don't be implicit, be explicit. And a very good example is how they've utilized the different nominations for the different awards by actually using it as a reminder of all the things that they've done for that movie. This has been exceptional. I mean, you never know whether these film marketing, social media special are going to take us, but it's just wonderful. I mean, it's really feels like, a bit of a guilty pleasure where the work should be harder than this, talking about social media we love, and we talk about films as well. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of the Social Media Newsroom. Natalie Eminae, thank you so much for doing all the research. Lovely to have you with us. Until the next time, please go out there and make sure the social media is better and faster. I was Pascal Fintoni, and she was Natalie Eminae.